Joining me now to discuss is Amber Athey, White House correspondent for the Daily Caller. Amber, great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
And congrats on your promotion up to White House correspondent. Well earned.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very excited.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay, so Elizabeth Warren is out there. She's setting up an exploratory committee, but let's be realistic. This woman is running for president. She's firmly committed to the primary. Does she have a shot in the primary, or are voters going to look for, and the Democratic Party going to look for, somebody more moderate? Because she is definitely from the far left wing of the Democratic Party.
She is from the far left wing, but that is something that Democrats have been clamoring for ever since Bernie Sanders ran against Hillary Clinton. And of course, there were questions at that time about whether or not Bernie had the election stolen from him from the old guard of the Democratic Party, which was bolstering Hillary Clinton's campaign throughout 2016. But I think the bigger challenge for Warren is going to be what many have pegged as her unlikability. She has relatively low favorability ratings across the country. She, of course, has said that those notes about her personality are sexist. Of course, there are plenty of female politicians who don't struggle with the same issue. The problem is her relatability. And as soon as she came out after announcing her exploratory bid, she further pushed that problem into the spotlight by having her awkward Instagram Live beer drinking scenario. And then again later that week, when she admitted, oddly, to buying things on Amazon, as if that was supposed to somehow make her more relatable to the average American.
Yeah, what does it say about the Democratic Party? Because on one hand, Amber, they promote themselves as the party of progress and the party of youth. And on the other, the early runners in the Democratic primary are Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, and Hillary Clinton. Maybe Beto O'Rourke will throw his hat in the ring, but the four that can raise money and have some kind of a war chest are Sanders, Warren, Clinton, and Biden. Really doesn't play into the party of youth narrative.
That's exactly right. And luckily for Democrats, they don't necessarily have to have youths running in order to get the youth vote, because the youth vote has, of course, historically gone Democrat.
Yeah.
But that being said, there is this split in the party about the old guard Democrats and then the younger, more progressive voices like the Ocasio-Cortezes, and you mentioned Beto O'Rourke. Those people are capturing a lot more national energy. Beto, of course, raised a significant amount of money for his failed Senate campaign from across the country, not just from Texas. So there is something to be said for Democrats considering running a younger, fresher candidate in 2020 to try to challenge President Donald Trump.
Amber, why do you think they don't run? And I've had this conversation on the show many times with your colleague, Benny Johnson. Why don't Democrats run a guy like Conor Lamb? Now, if they ran Conor Lamb, I think many of us on the right would sit down and say, okay, you know what? This guy makes us nervous. This guy's he's got mass appeal, but instead they keep going to the far left. Why is it that they're rejecting the very electable moderates in their party?
It's such an interesting question. I think the Democrats have decided that they'd rather appeal to this really small progressive part of their party as opposed to actually trying to win elections. It's all about who can be the most woke, per se, as they head into 2020. Because when you look at someone like Conor Lamb, he's someone who can, one, appeal to the blue-collar working-class voters that Trump famously turned from Obama in 2016, and two, he can capture at least part of the evangelical base if he does decide to run more on a pro-life ticket as opposed to a pro-choice ticket. So someone like that would be pretty much universally appealing. That's why Joe Biden is polling so well, because he has that blue-collar connection as well. And yet the Democrats seem to be more interested in proving their progressive chops than they are in trying to win an election.
Well, now we have a newspaper in New Hampshire begging Bernie Sanders not to run. What's all that about?
That's interesting. I guess there are two really opposed factions right now as to whether or not he should run. The people who were huge supporters of him in 2016 would love for him to run again. They were really upset by the way that the DNC seemed to back and favor Hillary Clinton during the primary. But then there's another wing of the party who thinks that Bernie is too old, he's too progressive, and that they need to go for someone who's more moderate in order to challenge Donald Trump. But what Bernie Sanders has going for him is that he speaks to these middle-class, blue-collar values just like President Trump does. He obviously has different ideas for how to help the manufacturing class as opposed to President Trump, but they do speak to a lot of the same issues.
All right, and let's talk about Joe Biden here before I let you go. So Biden's going to decide, as you said, very shortly whether or not he's going to run again. But again, back to age. If Biden were to run, hypothetically, into his second term, he'd be well into his middle to late 80s. Is it past time for Joe Biden? Is he simply too old to run for president at this point?
It's a good question. And one of the factors that I think will play into this is just health in general. I don't think it's necessarily about age for a lot of people.
Fair point.
When you look at someone like Hillary Clinton, for example, who of course fainted during the 9/11 memorial ceremony, had issues with her cough and her voice throughout the campaign, there were legitimate issues as to whether or not she was healthy enough to handle the stresses of being president. Donald Trump is a fairly old man as well, but he seems to have more energy and vigor than some of the other people who are running. So if Biden appears to have a clean bill of health and is energetic and able to handle the stresses of the campaign, then I don't see any reason why his age would be a factor.
All right, Amber, we have about a minute left. Who do you think, if anybody, primaries Donald Trump? I had this conversation with Bill O'Reilly last week. I think right now, Jeff Flake and John Kasich are definitely going to jump into a 2020 primary. Mitt Romney, possibly. What's your take on all that?
I think it would be a huge mistake. I don't think any of them have a legitimate chance at beating President Donald Trump. We've already seen these people coming out of the woodwork. Romney, of course, writing that Washington Post op-ed before starting his tenure in the Senate. And these people are all talking about moral leadership as if the American people didn't know about President Trump's moral failings when they voted for him in 2016. That's simply not a part of the calculation that they've given for voting for him for president. They're more interested in his policy achievements and the promises that he's made to the American people. So I find it very unlikely that similar messaging would work in 2020.
Amber Athey, White House correspondent for the Daily Caller. Great to see you, as always, Amber. Thanks.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to see more breaking news coverage, exclusive interviews, and great videos, click over here to our YouTube channel and subscribe. And don't forget to download the free Newsmax TV app. Newsmax TV, it's real news for real people.